Child and Woman and the creative reflections that follow in this episode and subsequent episodes are artistic expressions, not clinical interpretations. Nothing in this series is meant to diagnose, treat, or offer therapeutic instruction. If anything in these conversations touches a tender part of your story, please consider connecting with a qualified mental health professional, a trusted support person, or a trauma-informed practitioner. Your well-being matters, and you don't have to navigate any of this alone.
Welcome to the Shame Out Loud series. This is a space within the Lori Clark Show where we talk about shame, fear, silence, and the ways that those emotions and feelings live in our body, and where we can begin returning to ourselves again through curiosity, truth, and compassion. Today, I want to speak about something that sits quietly beneath many of our stories. I was sitting here and I was going to work on something else. And I thought, no, you know what? I want to just give this to you as an encouragement before the Shame Out Loud series that is featuring Child and Woman starts at the end of January. And it's this whole thing that I was thinking about around the choice of beginning again. If you've been curious about this series that's coming out and you followed with episode 91 and 92, this will be episode 93. And all of these are quite supportive as you begin to entertain what it is to feel safe in your body, what it is to feel secure. What does that mean for you? If you've never had it, what does it feel like? How does it show up? Maybe you find yourself in a dysregulated nervous system. What does that look like? How do you move through it? And so there's this whole idea of beginning again. And I was reflecting on that for myself, going, wow, okay, so I don't always like starting over, right? But I do want to start over so that I can feel grounded and aligned and meeting the safety that I want in my body and in my nervous system. I will choose to start over if it means that I can allow myself to have more. And that's not just abundance or money. It's more for me about that calm and safety and changing the narrative that I so crave in my life. In one of the episodes, I think it was 91, I talked about all I want is just stability. And I want to feel stable in myself in the same way I feel stable in one of the most profound relationships I've had in my life, which is with my partner, Dave. I want to feel the way that we welcome one another and are at ease with one another. I want to feel that in myself, on my own, by myself. And so again, I can choose to begin again when I know it is going to bring me into a deeper connection to myself. And that's what I wanted to share with you today is it is safe to begin, to move toward the direction of your life that you actually want. So often, and for so many of us, there are parts of our life that we are living that we don't really want. We are living them out of maybe it is the necessity of survival mode, or it is out of a necessity to protect yourself. Maybe finding love for yourself is really hard. And so you don't know how to do it. And so you live to give energy and time and support to other people, but you don't know how to do it to yourself. This is just a moment where you can pause and hear from myself and maybe get a glimpse into the next conversations that I'm going to have at a round table with people who chose to begin again, chose to start again. Because starting again and beginning again led to the life that they actually wanted. And it's allowing yourself to want more, not from others, but for yourself. It doesn't have an age. Beginning again has no age requirement. And all that it really asks of us is some of the things that I'm going to share with you this morning. One of them is curiosity. Curiosity about what shaped you, curiosity about the emotions or feelings or experiences, narratives that you carry that are yours and the ones that are not yours. And even the ones that no longer need to be protected in the way that they once did. I always think back to my situation because it's the only thing I have to remind me about the seriousness of like how I've done it. And I think for years I lived in a state of seriousness because I wanted to start again. I remember being in a space where I was like, I'm not doing what I'm shown here. What this is modeling, this way, this life is being modeled to me in this family container, in this environment where the collective belief tells us that it has to be these ways. This is how it's supposed to look. This is how it's supposed to be. I was like, well, yeah, no, I'm some of it is good, but most of it is not the way that I'm going to live. And so when you know that, you don't have to live the way that you were living. So you can choose to do something differently, to begin again, to start over, to see something differently. But that's really scary for many of us. I have been in a constant state of fear, not in the bad fear, but more if like choosing this path of saying what I want to say, speaking the truth that's in me, writing, that takes a conscious effort on my behalf to begin again, to start over, to not fall into this pattern of, Lori, you are not smart enough. You are terrible in school. You're not a writer. You can't, anytime you've ever handed somebody your writing, it just reads terribly. And so what did I do? I just wrote consistently for 17 years every day, and I put in the time, and I wasn't afraid to begin again. And in that beginning, it took 17 years for me to go, even if my creative writing is not everybody's taste or what everybody wants to read, it might make some people just crazy to read it. I don't care. I don't care because I've had people feed back to me and say, that really touched my life. That made a difference. That line in what you said was so profound. But getting there, I had to start over. And that's really where this Child and Woman series begins. It isn't a story about what happened, and it isn't a story about anything other than what can be possible for you, what was possible for me, what was possible and is possible for the guests that have joined me at the round table when we all choose to pick ourselves. And I'm learning this now, but I am proud of myself. And this series invites you to be proud of yourself too, for the experiences that happened that were incredibly difficult. And yet you and I are still here. The struggles that we found ourselves in are not easy. And the sacrifices and the trials have been incredibly hard. Think back for a second on your own journey, on your own life. And yet You're here listening. I'm here writing. I'm here talking. I'm here producing. You're working. You're thinking, becoming curious. Because there is something in us that wants to move forward, that wants to have the courage to start again. So, what is it and how do we do it? Well, it's so different for everyone. And I don't think in this series we lay out, oh, okay, this is how this goes. If you do this and this and this, then you're going to find yourself again. Or if you do this and this and this, you're going to return to love, or you're going to, learn to have that messy conversation. I know that part of the journey is the understanding that everyone's journey is so different and so beautiful and so unique. What you need to know is that you do not need to relive anything as you listen to Child and Woman. What it is it's honoring you and honoring that you did the hard thing, that you've done hard things. And if you would like to move forward with your life and begin to find new perspective and new outlook and learn how to see yourself through the eyes of love, maybe for the first time, or let down those protective barriers, we honor what it took all of us to survive. We honor the adaptation that we had to undergo in order to live in that alcoholic family environment. We honor the adapting that it took to live in a house where parents made everything your responsibility and they looked to you for advice and you were parentified. We honor the process and we honor what it took for some of us who were sexually assaulted, who had incredibly difficult experiences, who spoke and said we needed someone to help us, and that never came for us. And yet you adapted. That is what we are honoring. And also, as we begin this conversation, we notice how and what needs to be loosened. And that looks different for everybody. But as you hear people talk, you'll know, oh man, if they did it, I can do it. Or if that was their experience, then maybe I can, maybe, just maybe. It's just this moment of curiosity that we have through conversation and through our lived experiences. Like I said, it's growing up in alcoholic families, parentified, sexual abuse, physical abuse, toxic families. Life has happened for all of us and life has happened for you. And we just want to remind you, I just want to remind you that as you continue to seek joy and meaning in your life, that, you're not alone. That as you seek to find joy in your life, you and are doing whatever it takes to get you calm and sound mind and separate from that narrative, maybe that's cycling, maybe you're breaking a cycle. You're doing what it takes. And when you are in the middle of it, like all of us are, there isn't one of us that sits at the round table that says, oh, we are out of this learning zone. No, we all know that this is the journey for the rest of our lives. We will be learning and unlearning and realigning and starting over and beginning again. Most importantly, when that is the understanding, it is really helpful to know that you are not alone. There are so many of us that are here on this journey and who are reshaping our narratives and choosing ourselves without guilt. And we are saying no. It's really interesting because as I think about starting again or beginning again and what I was doing or how I was engaging in encouragement to myself, because no one was really like, hey, you can begin again. It was more of me in the last 5 years going, I have got to begin again. How am I going to do that? But I just knew that I wanted to go forward. And the way to do that was to stay curious. And that helped me find just even one small, tiny moment of peace in my life. And it was recently where I was reflecting and I think when I was framing, why does it feel easy for me to begin again? Or why do I want to start over? Why do I choose that? And I realized because way, way back when I had experienced some really difficult things and I stood in the bathroom and I looked in the mirror at myself and the tap was running and I was just in pieces. I remember saying to myself the words, anything is better than what I just experienced. And that belief moved me into curiosity, into exploration, and into this knowing that there has to be something better. There must be something better. And I found out that there is something better. It begins with a little fear about starting again because you don't really know where you're going. When you start over, you're like, this is so new. I've never been here. And yet anything is better than the how you had to live or the exhaustion of living in survival mode or the loneliness and isolation of suppression because your voice doesn't matter or didn't matter. I knew something was better and that beginning again was okay because I knew that some of these lessons in my life come from learning the hard way in relationships, um, how we want to be treated, how we treat others, seeing our protection mechanisms as we relate to other people and them saying back to us, hey, you know what, that hurt me or that doesn't feel right. Um, Maybe it's by learning what healthy boundaries are and learning to validate yourself first. But one of the most important things as I began to reflect on, okay, this isn't working for me. I must start something over. I need to do something differently. Well, that came through the validation. I talk a lot about that where I just preferred to find validation by loving others really hard. And it's not a bad thing if you can do it without giving all of your energy and your life away. Meaning for me, like I would give until it exhausted me, and then I would never be able to find um, any restoration from it. It wasn't life giving. It was my friendships were real. My relationships were real. I just, I, I believe I overly gave. I gave out of they love me and they'll never leave me. Not from a place of I love myself. I'm never leaving myself again. And therefore I love myself so hard that that's just naturally going to come and outflow into the relationships around me. It was a very different positioning for me. And as I was thinking about this process and the choosing that we all make to, begin again and stuff like that, I was having a conversation with one of my children, my adult kids, the other day, and we were talking about being the first. And sometimes one of the things that stops us from beginning again is that you're the first. And what I mean by that is I remember learning about some of the ways in which the women in my life were treated. Some of the ways in which different women in my, that I've been friends with, or different women in my family, different women in groups. Maybe they were community groups or school groups or church groups. And I realized that by changing the way I was approaching my relationships, my life, my thought life, my spiritual life, my emotional life, that I may be the first person out of that specific group or relationship or family dynamic, family container to do that. And that was really fascinating to me, because I was like, oh, well, maybe I might be the first woman to say no to being suppressed by abuse in my family. Maybe I'm the first to leave the familiarity of relying on this safety of the community, of the family container, to challenge the family container and what's in the family container, to say, I won't give my emotional safety and security away just to be accepted. I know many of you have said and been the first, and I'm proud of you for that. And it comes at a cost. And if I'm the first of my name and you're the first of your name to do these things, then perhaps there are others that can be too. And I was so proud of the women at the round table because I realized that they had begun again, that they weren't afraid of beginning again, that they weren't afraid of starting over, that they weren't afraid of taking a look at that shadow aspect of themselves, because anything was better than how they were treated or being treated or how they were treated way back then. And these women that sat alongside of me, we were also doing the firsts in our family to break the cycle, to end a pattern. We are the first to say, oh, this ends with me. This isn't going to my kids. I'm not passing this on to my kids. I'm not taking that family container, the belief and the patterns and the ways of being or defining ourselves, that collective, we are not, we are this, here's how we live. That ends with me. I'm not bringing that into my lineage. It stops here. So we are all the firsts in many ways. And this series is a first for me. It's a big deal for me, because it's taking something that I wrote that was, holy and sacred, that came from a really hard time in my life. Couldn't sleep for weeks. And I woke up one night, and I was waking up consecutively, like night after night, uh, midnight, and I wouldn't go back to sleep until 4 in the morning. And I'd come into my office and I just write. And the reading, which has become a series, the reading Child and Woman, came from that space. And then like I said in a conversation, I can't remember where it is now, but I said, and then I just put it on the shelf, put it in a file in my computer and went, okay, I won't look at that. And it popped up one day and I read it and I went, oh my God. And that's when I realized, okay, I might need to begin again here. Something moved in me. And I knew that the way that I interacted with this situation that had become evident couldn't interact with it with the same old patterns and beliefs and ways of interaction. I had to begin again, whether I liked it or not. And oh my gosh, it hurt. But we can do hard things. And anything is better than remaining held by the hardest thing that happened to you all those years ago. There's something here about finding the light within the pain, especially when you go first. when we've seen our shadow selves, we're not afraid to look. When we kind of look at it and go, I think that's like the part that I don't want to look at, but now I can't look away and I need to look at it. That's the first. You're the first to do that. You're the first, maybe in your relationship, maybe in your family. But anything is better than being trapped in what was. And sometimes new information asks you to start over with maybe the way you think, the way you feel, the way you've always done something. This series isn't afraid to welcome you in to the process of starting over again. And before you listen to the reading of The Child and Woman and listen to all the roundtable discussions that come from it, I just want you to take a moment to pause and to acknowledge what you have been through in your life, what you've survived, what you've worked through, what you have maybe pushed down, pushed away because it was just too painful. Tammy Valicenti is serving as a co-host for this particular series with me. And she talked about, I think it was, I said something like, I felt really bad about running away emotionally, but it was just too heavy for me. I just couldn't deal with what had happened. And she was like, that is perfectly normal. It's actually good to do that. Your body is doing what it needs to do to keep you safe. And I hadn't really thought about that. Those kinds of things might trigger you so that you can go, oh my gosh, okay, I can do it then. Or maybe you can find the validation that you needed to say, yeah, I felt like on that particular experience, I kind of left myself. I left myself because I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know how to react. Tammy is so eloquent and beautifully spoken in this series. She gives lots of insight and support to those of us who are beginning again. And so I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you that you've worked through what you've worked through. I'm proud of me that I've worked through it. We've learned stuff emotionally, spiritually, mentally. We've learned that we can be supported. And that's what this next phase is for me, is knowing that I don't have to do this alone, that I'm supported. And as someone who's gone first, I can tell you, and as someone who's gone first, I can tell you that when I wrote Child and Woman, I realized that the pathway was cleared for me. It was almost as if something bigger than me said, let me clear a way for you. You can be the first to walk this path. And so I walked down that path, and of course, it's metaphorically, of course, because I didn't really walk down a path. I did it in my mind's eye, but this came out of my writing, and my writing is just a creative piece. But as I walked down the path, then a forest appeared. And the way that I was able to find safety is to go into this forest that I wrote about. And I spent most of my life in that forest, and then curiosity led me out. And the question that we asked the roundtable guests is, did you walk away from something and go into the safety of your forest to protect yourself? And what did it feel like to enter it? What did it feel like to leave that situation and go into something more internal where you felt like you could control, you could hide, you could shield, you could protect yourself. The conversation right now is about doing something first for yourself. Maybe you're doing something first in your family, your friend group, your church group, your community, your school group, your work, your relationships. Maybe you're just beginning again because you want the chronic pain to stop and you want to hit a pause button, so you want to begin again and reset yourself. Well, that's what this series is about. And the series is really about the shame that came before and the shame that came after. Because when shame comes, we often run in order to survive. And when safety returns to us, when we want to begin again and say, hey, you know what? I got to find a new way to relate to myself because I don't like feeling unsafe all the time and I don't like looking outside of myself for safety. Well, I got to find safety again. And when it returns, from my experience, as it slowly returned to me, I've been able to step back into myself. And that's what beginning again really is. So if something resonated with you, I invite you to continue thinking about this upcoming series that's releasing soon, Child and Woman. And we will begin with a reading that I wrote. And then there are conversations that follow. And those conversations are there to remind all of us that we do not have to fix what is broken or bruised. We can just choose for ourselves what it is that we want. It's about understanding how and what was adapted in order for us to make it through the day or the hour. And it's about discovering what we want to reclaim for ourselves now. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for choosing yourself. Thank you for entertaining the idea that you can be the first, that you can do hard things, and that you can choose yourself. So thank you. And I will meet you in the reading of Child and Woman.